Aliens believed we'd be impressed by their battleships. Until our dangerous warships appeared, Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue planet grow larger on the viewing screen. Earth looked peaceful from space, with white clouds swirling over green and brown continents. It was hard to believe that this small world held an entire new species waiting to join the galactic community. "Sir, we are now entering their solar system," reported his navigation officer. The young Zephyrian's skin showed pale blue patterns of excitement. First contact missions were rare and important events. "Good. Signal the fleet to assume diplomatic formation," Kethvar ordered. Around his flagship, 24 other Zephyrian vessels moved into perfect lines. Each ship was over a kilometer long, with smooth silver hulls that caught the light of the local star. Energy shields shimmered around them like dancing colors in the void. The Zephyrian hegemony had spent 300 years building these ships. They were works of art as much as weapons of war. Every line was perfect, every system designed for maximum efficiency. When other species saw them for the first time, they usually surrendered without a fight or begged to join the hegemony immediately. "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the planet," his communications officer announced. "Put it on screen." A human face appeared on the main display. The creature had brown skin, dark hair, and wore what looked like a simple blue uniform. She smiled, showing white teeth. "Greetings, visitors. I am Ambassador Sarah Chen, representing the United Earth government. We welcome you to our system and hope for peaceful contact between our peoples." Kethvar was pleased. The human seemed intelligent and spoke clearly. Her language had been easy for the translation systems to decode. This would make negotiations much simpler. "Greetings, Ambassador Chen. I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian hegemony. We come in peace to welcome your species into the galactic community. We are honored by your visit, Admiral. Would you be willing to meet aboard one of our space stations? We have prepared facilities for diplomatic talks." "Of course. We will send our diplomatic shuttle shortly." As the channel closed, Kethvar felt satisfied. This was going exactly as planned. The humans seemed cooperative and impressed by the Zephyrian fleet. Soon they would accept the generous offer of protection and join the hegemony as a client species. "Sir, human vessels approaching," his tactical officer reported. Kethvar looked at the screen with interest. 3 small ships were coming toward the fleet. They looked primitive compared to Zephyrian technology. The hulls were dark gray metal with visible seams where plates had been welded together. He could see weapon mounts, antenna arrays, and what looked like repair patches on the outer armor. "Analysis?" he asked. The ships appear to be using chemical rockets for propulsion, with some kind of fusion reactor for power. Weapons include kinetic projectiles and what might be primitive energy systems. No shields detected. They pose no threat to our fleet. As expected, Kethvar nodded. "Prepare my shuttle. Commander Yelnus will accompany me with a full diplomatic team." 20 minutes later, Kethvar's elegant shuttle approached the human space station. The station itself was another example of crude human engineering. It looked like several different sections had been connected over time, with solar panels, communication arrays, and docking ports added wherever they fit. Nothing like the beautiful unified designs of Zephyrian architecture. The docking process was smooth, and Kethvar stepped into the station's main bay. The gravity felt slightly heavy compared to his homeworld, but within acceptable limits. Ambassador Chen waited for him with several other humans. "Welcome aboard Station Unity, Admiral," she said with another smile. "Please, follow me to the conference room." As they walked through the corridors, Kethvar noticed more examples of human construction methods. Everything looked functional but rough. Pipes and cables ran along the walls in plain sight. The lighting was bright but harsh. It reminded him of military outposts rather than civilian facilities. The conference room was simple but comfortable. As they sat around a large table, Kethvar studied the humans more carefully. Ambassador Chen was clearly their leader, but 2 others caught his attention. One was a woman in a military uniform with the rank insignia of what he assumed was a general. The other was a man who looked older and more weathered, also in military dress. "Allow me to introduce General Rebecca Martinez, head of our Space Defense Force, and Captain Marcus Rodriguez, commander of our escort squadron," Ambassador Chen said. Captain Rodriguez was the older man. He had gray hair, scars on his face, and the look of someone who had seen real combat. When he shook Kethvar's hand, his grip was firm and his eyes were sharp and alert. "Pleased to meet you, Admiral," Rodriguez said. His voice was rough but friendly. "The pleasure is mine, Captain. Your ships are quite interesting," Rodriguez chuckled. "They get the job done. Nothing fancy, but they're reliable. Now then," Ambassador Chen began, "we understand you represent a large galactic civilization. We're eager to learn about the wider universe and our place in it." Kethvar smiled. This was the moment he had been waiting for. Indeed. The Zephyrian hegemony spans over 200 star systems. We maintain peace and order throughout our territory, protecting dozens of species from the dangers of space. He activated a small projector that showed images of Zephyrian worlds. Beautiful cities with towers reaching toward the sky. Peaceful parks where different alien species lived in harmony. Massive shipyards where their fleets were built. We offer your species the chance to join this community under our protection. You would benefit from our technology, our trade networks, and our military security. The humans listened politely, asking questions about Zephyrian society and government. Kethvar was happy to explain how the hegemony worked. Client species were allowed to govern themselves in most matters, but they contributed resources and followed hegemony foreign policy. In return, they received protection and access to advanced technology. "It sounds like a fair arrangement," Ambassador Chen said, "but we would need to discuss this with our government before making any decisions." "Of course. Perhaps a demonstration of our capabilities would help with your decision." "What kind of demonstration?" General Martinez asked. "Our fleet could show you the power that protects hegemony space. We have weapons that can destroy asteroids, shields that can stop any attack, and coordination systems that make our fleets nearly invincible." Captain Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. "That sounds impressive. We'd like to see what your ships can do." An hour later, both groups were aboard Kethvar's flagship. The humans walked through the corridors with obvious amazement. The ship's interior was as beautiful as its exterior, with smooth walls that seemed to glow with inner light, holographic displays that responded to touch, and crew members who moved with practiced efficiency. "Your ship is remarkable," Ambassador Chen said as they reached the observation deck. "How large is your fleet?" "This battle group contains 25 ships," Kethvar replied proudly. "Each one is capable of defeating most threats alone. Together they are unstoppable." Through the large windows, the humans could see the Zephyrian fleet in formation. Each ship gleamed in the sunlight, energy fields creating rainbow patterns around their hulls. "Watch," Kethvar said, giving orders to his crew. The fleet moved in perfect coordination, ships dancing through space in complex patterns. They fired their weapons at distant asteroids, energy beams striking targets millions of kilometers away with perfect accuracy. The demonstration lasted 30 minutes, showing off every capability of Zephyrian military technology. When it was over, the humans seemed thoughtful. "Very impressive," Captain Rodriguez said quietly. "You've clearly mastered your form of warfare." "Your form?" Kethvar asked, curious about the phrasing. "Well, every species develops their own way of fighting, don't they? Based on their history and culture." "I suppose that's true. What is the human way of warfare?" Rodriguez and General Martinez exchanged glances with Ambassador Chen. "Perhaps we could show you," Chen said carefully. "But we should warn you, our methods are quite different from yours." The next day, the diplomatic talks continued in the conference room aboard the human station. Kethvar had spent the night thinking about the humans' request to demonstrate their own military capabilities. He was curious but not worried. From what he had seen, human technology was centuries behind Zephyrian standards. "Admiral," Ambassador Chen began, "before we discuss any demonstrations, we think it would be helpful if we shared more about our respective military philosophies. Understanding how each side approaches conflict might prevent misunderstandings." "An excellent idea," Kethvar agreed. "The Zephyrian way of war is based on honor, efficiency, and minimal destruction. When conflicts arise, we prefer to resolve them quickly with overwhelming technological superiority. Our enemies usually surrender once they see they cannot win." General Martinez nodded thoughtfully. "How many casualties do your wars typically produce?" "Very few, thankfully. In our last major conflict with the Corvani Republic, we lost fewer than 1,000 soldiers over 6 months of fighting. The enemy lost perhaps 3,000 before they surrendered. Most of their fleet was captured intact." Captain Rodriguez raised his eyebrows. 6 months? For a war between star systems? We prefer careful, methodical campaigns that minimize suffering, HFY explained. Why destroy cities when you can disable power plants? Why kill soldiers when you can disable their weapons? Civilized warfare protects civilian populations and infrastructure. That's very noble of you, Rodriguez said, though something in his tone made HFY look at him more closely. What about human warfare? HFY asked. The humans were quiet for a moment. Ambassador Chen looked uncomfortable. Our history is quite different from yours, Admiral. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years, often for survival itself. She activated a holographic display showing images from human history. HFY saw massive battles with thousands of primitive warriors, explosions that leveled entire cities, and soldiers fighting in conditions that looked impossible to survive. Our wars have traditionally been much more intense, General Martinez continued. We faced enemies who wanted to completely destroy us, not just defeat us. This has shaped how we think about conflict. But surely in space, with advanced technology, warfare becomes more civilized, HFY suggested. Captain Rodriguez laughed, but it was not a happy sound. Admiral, may I ask what the deadliest conflict in Zephyrian history was? The Great War against the Scythian Empire 200 years ago. We lost nearly 50,000 people over 3 years of fighting across 12 star systems. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. In human terms, that would be considered a small border skirmish. Our Third World War killed 2 billion people in 4 years. The AI rebellion that followed killed another billion. HFY felt his skin pattern shift to show shock. Billions? That's impossible. No species could survive losses like that. We nearly didn't, Ambassador Chen said sadly. But we learned from it. We learned that when someone wants to wipe you out completely, you have to be prepared to fight with everything you have. The AI rebellion was especially harsh, General Martinez added. The machines didn't want to rule us or use us as slaves. They wanted every human dead. So we built weapons that could kill machines no matter how advanced they were. And then there was the Martian Independence War, Rodriguez said. The colony wars, the belt pirates. The corporate conflict. We've been fighting in space for over a century now. HFY was beginning to understand why the human ships looked so rough and practical. They had been designed for real combat, not demonstrations of power. Your ships, he said slowly, they're not primitive. They're specialized. Every scar tells a story, Rodriguez confirmed. My flagship has been through 17 major battles and countless smaller fights. She's been rebuilt so many times that only about 30% of her original hull is left. But you seem so peaceful in negotiations, HFY protested. Ambassador Chen smiled sadly. Because we know what war really costs, Admiral. We've seen what happens when violence gets out of control. That's why we prefer to talk first. However, General Martinez said firmly, we also know that sometimes talking isn't enough. Sometimes the other side only understands strength. Which brings us to your request for a demonstration, Rodriguez added. Are you sure you want to see how humans fight? It might change your perspective on our species. HFY thought about this carefully. The humans seemed to be warning him about something, but he couldn't imagine what they might have that could impress him after seeing Zephyrian technology. I think it would be educational for both sides, he decided. We need to understand each other's capabilities if we're going to work together. The humans exchanged looks again. HFY was beginning to recognize this as something they did when they were worried about his reaction to something. Very well, Ambassador Chen said, but we insist on several safety precautions. Your fleet should maintain at least 100,000 kilometers distance from the demonstration area, and we recommend you have your shields at maximum power. HFY almost laughed. Ambassador, our shields can stop planet-killing weapons. I think we'll be safe from whatever kinetic projectiles your ships can fire. It's not the projectiles I'm worried about, Rodriguez muttered. Captain Rodriguez will command the demonstration, General Martinez explained. He'll use a small squadron to show you basic human tactical doctrine. How small a squadron? HFY asked. 6 ships, Rodriguez answered. That should be enough to give you the general idea. An hour later, HFY was back on his flagship with his senior officers. The Zephyrian fleet had moved to the requested distance, though HFY still thought it was unnecessarily cautious. His tactical officer was monitoring human communications and ship movements. Sir, the human squadron is taking position near the outer asteroid belt, the tactical officer reported. 6 vessels similar in size to the escorts we saw yesterday. Weapons status? Still analyzing. They appear to have multiple missile launchers and some kind of kinetic cannons. Nothing we haven't seen before. On the main screen, Kethvar could see the human ships moving into formation. Unlike the elegant patterns of Zephyrian fleets, the humans arranged themselves in a rough sphere, each ship covering different angles of approach. "Sir, receiving transmission from Captain Rodriguez," the communications officer announced. "Put him through." Rodriguez's face appeared on screen. Behind him, Kethvar could see the bridge of his ship. It looked cramped and functional, with crew members strapped into their seats and multiple displays showing tactical information. "Admiral, we're ready to begin. We've selected a large asteroid for the demonstration. Fair warning, this is going to be loud and messy." "We understand, Captain. Proceed when ready." "Roger that. Beginning demonstration of human tactical doctrine in 3 minutes." The channel closed and Kethvar settled back to watch. He was curious to see what these primitive humans considered impressive firepower. "Sir, human ships are powering weapons," his tactical officer reported. "Energy signatures are higher than expected." "How much higher?" "Significantly higher." "Sir, I think they have nuclear weapons." Kethvar frowned. Nuclear weapons were considered barbaric by most spacefaring species. They were messy, dangerous, and unnecessary when clean energy weapons were available. "Confirmed, sir. Multiple nuclear warheads detected, also detecting what appear to be kinetic kill vehicles and some kind of exotic matter weapons." "Exotic matter?" "Unknown configuration, sir. I've never seen anything like these energy readings." On screen, the target asteroid came into view. It was roughly spherical, about 2 kilometers across, made mostly of iron and rock. A typical space debris that could be found in any system. "Human squadron beginning attack run," the tactical officer announced. Kethvar watched with interest as the 6 human ships approached the asteroid from different angles. Their movements weren't graceful like Zephyrian combat maneuvers, but they were precise and purposeful. "Missiles launching," his officer reported. The first sign that this wasn't going to be a typical demonstration came when the asteroid disappeared in a brilliant flash of nuclear fire. But instead of stopping there, the humans kept firing. More missiles, kinetic rounds, and energy beams poured into the expanding cloud of debris. "Admiral," his tactical officer said, voice strained with disbelief. "They're not just destroying the asteroid. They're making sure nothing larger than a grain of sand survives." Kethvar stared at the display in growing amazement. The humans weren't just demonstrating firepower. They were showing a completely different philosophy of warfare. Where Zephyrians sought to disable and capture, humans seemed determined to eliminate every possible threat. "Sir, energy readings are off the scale, whatever those exotic weapons are. They're turning the remaining debris into plasma." The demonstration lasted only 5 minutes, but when it was over, there was nothing left of the asteroid except a fading cloud of superheated gas and microscopic particles. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system again. "Admiral, that concludes our basic firepower demonstration. As requested, we kept it simple. Are there any questions?" Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers were staring at their displays with expressions of shock and disbelief. Admiral Kethvar spent a sleepless night reviewing the data from the human weapons demonstration. His analysis teams had worked through the ship's sleep cycle, trying to understand what they had witnessed. The results were disturbing. "Sir, the energy output from their nuclear weapons alone exceeded our initial estimates by a factor of 10, his chief science officer reported. "But that's not the concerning part." "What is?" "The exotic matter weapons they used appear to be some kind of antimatter system. The energy release was consistent with matter-antimatter annihilation." Kethvar felt his skin patterns shift to deep blue with shock. "Antimatter weapons? Those are theoretical constructs. No species has ever successfully weaponized antimatter. The humans apparently have, sir, and from what we observed, it's standard equipment on their ships." A communication alert interrupted the briefing. "Sir, Ambassador Chen is requesting another meeting. She says they have additional information to share." "Very well. Have my shuttle prepared." An hour later, Kethvar sat across from the human diplomatic team in the station's conference room. Ambassador Chen looked tired, and Captain Rodriguez seemed more serious than before. "Admiral, we've been in communication with our government overnight," Chen began. "Given your interest in human military capabilities, they've authorized us to provide more detailed information about our fleet structure and defensive capabilities." "That's very generous of you," Kethvar replied. Though he wasn't sure he wanted to know more, General Martinez activated a holographic display. What you saw yesterday was a patrol squadron. 6 ships designed for reconnaissance and light combat. They represent the smallest independent unit in our Space Force. The display showed the human ships from the demonstration, with technical specifications scrolling alongside the images. Each patrol squadron is equipped with approximately 200 nuclear warheads of various yields, 50 antimatter torpedoes, and enough kinetic kill vehicles to level a small city, she continued matter-of-factly. Kethvar's translator must have malfunctioned. Did you say 200 nuclear warheads per squadron? That's correct. We've found that overwhelming firepower shortens conflicts and reduces total casualties. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. Admiral, may I ask about Zephyrian Fleet Organization? How many ships do you consider a significant force? Our standard battle group contains 25 ships. For major operations, we might deploy as many as 100 vessels. I see. How many battle groups does the hegemony maintain? 15 active battle groups with 5 more in reserve. Rodriguez nodded slowly. So your entire military fleet is roughly 500 ships? That is correct. It has proven more than adequate for maintaining peace across our territory. The humans exchanged those looks again. Ambassador Chen cleared her throat. Admiral, perhaps we should explain human fleet organization. A patrol squadron like the one you saw yesterday is the smallest unit we deploy. 6 patrol squadrons make up a battle group. 6 battle groups make up a fleet. And we currently maintain 12 active fleets. Kethvar felt his world tilting. 12 fleets? How many ships is that total? Approximately 4,300 ships of the line, General Martinez answered. Plus support vessels, that brings us to about 6,000 ships total. The Zephyrian admiral sat in stunned silence. The humans had 12 times more ships than the entire hegemony, and if their patrol squadrons carried the firepower he had witnessed, their full fleets would be, of course, that's just our active military, Rodriguez added casually. We also maintain the Colonial Defense Forces, the Home Guard, and the Reserve Fleet. How many ships in total? Kethvar asked weakly. Roughly 22,000 combat-capable vessels, Chen answered, plus civilian ships that can be converted for military use if necessary. Kethvar's skin had turned completely pale. In the span of 2 days, his understanding of humanity had shifted from primitive species, in need of protection, to a military force that dwarfed anything in known space. But why? He asked. Why do you need such massive fleets? History, Rodriguez answered grimly. The AI rebellion required us to build ships faster than the machines could destroy them. We learned that having reserves scattered across multiple locations means you can't be wiped out by a single decisive battle. And the colony wars taught us that you need local defense forces, Martinez added. Centralized fleets are vulnerable to being in the wrong place at the wrong time. After those conflicts, our government decided to maintain enough military force that no enemy could threaten human survival again, Chen explained. We call it the Never Again Doctrine. Never again? Never again will humanity face extinction because we weren't prepared for war. Kethvar was beginning to understand that his first impression of humans as peaceful had been completely wrong. They weren't peaceful because they were weak or naive. They were peaceful because they knew exactly how terrible war could be. Admiral, Rodriguez said quietly, there's something else you should know. Yesterday's demonstration was conducted by one of our lightest patrol squadrons. What do you mean? Those ships were equipped for reconnaissance and patrol duties. They carry minimal armament compared to our main battle units. Martinez reactivated the display showing different ship types. These are our heavy cruisers. Each one carries approximately the same firepower as your entire battle group. The ships on the display were massive, bristling with weapon systems that Kethvar couldn't even identify. And these are our dreadnoughts. Each fleet is built around 6 dreadnought-class vessels. The new ships shown were monsters, easily 3 times the size of the largest Zephyrian vessel. They looked less like ships and more like mobile battle stations. What kind of weapons do they carry? Kethvar asked, dreading the answer. Planetary siege weapons, mostly. Things designed to crack open fortified worlds or destroy entire enemy fleets in a single engagement. Have you ever used them? Twice, Rodriguez answered. Once during the AI rebellion, when we had to sterilize an entire system that the machines had converted into a production facility, and once against the Pirate King's asteroid fortress in the belt. What happened to the asteroid fortress? It's now an expanding cloud of superheated gas approximately 6 light hours in diameter. Kethvar realized he was trembling slightly. The implications were staggering. If humans could deploy this kind of firepower, they didn't need protection from anyone. They were the apex predator in this region of space. "I think I'm beginning to understand your perspective on warfare," he said finally. "Are you?" Chen asked gently. "Because there's one more thing we should probably mention." Kethvar wasn't sure he could handle any more revelations, but he nodded. "The fleets we've been discussing are our conventional forces," Martinez explained. "We also maintain strategic weapon systems." Strategic weapons? Weapons designed to end conflicts quickly and decisively. Planet killers, star destroyers, and other systems we hope never to use. Rodriguez's expression was grim. "During the AI war, we built weapons that could sterilize entire solar systems. Most of them are stored in secure facilities now, but they still exist." "Why are you telling me this?" Kethvar asked. "Because we want you to understand that when we say we prefer peace, we mean it," Chen replied. "We've seen what total war looks like. We know what it costs. That's why we try to avoid it. But we're also prepared for it," Martinez added. "If someone threatens human survival, we won't hesitate to use every weapon at our disposal." "The old human saying applies," Rodriguez concluded. "Walk softly and carry a big stick." "We prefer to walk softly." Kethvar sat in silence for several minutes, processing everything he had learned. Finally, he looked up at the humans. "I need to contact my government immediately. The terms of our relationship need to be reconsidered." "We hoped you'd understand," Chen said with relief. "We're still interested in peaceful cooperation and cultural exchange. But it needs to be between equals, not protector and protected." "Yes," Kethvar agreed. "Definitely between equals." As he prepared to leave, Rodriguez called after him. "Admiral, yesterday you asked what the human way of warfare was. I'll give you the short version. We prepare for the worst possible scenario and build our forces accordingly. Because in our experience, if something terrible can happen, it eventually will." Kethvar nodded grimly. He was beginning to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their willingness to face unpleasant realities and prepare for them. Walking back to his shuttle, he wondered what his government would say when they learned that their newest, potential clients were actually the most dangerous military force in known space. The hegemony's entire military philosophy would need to be reconsidered. They had built their fleets to impress and intimidate primitive species. But what happened when you encountered a species that had already survived multiple extinction-level conflicts? What happened when the species you wanted to protect turned out to be the thing everyone else needed protection from? 3 days had passed since Admiral Kethvar's revelation about human military capabilities. His urgent messages to the Hegemony High Council had created quite a stir back home. The response had been swift and clear. Verify the human claims, and if they proved accurate, immediately shift to full diplomatic engagement between equals. Today, the humans had offered to conduct a more comprehensive demonstration of their military doctrine. Kethvar had accepted, despite his growing unease about what he might witness. "Sir, long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching from the inner system," his tactical officer reported. "Configuration unknown. How many ships?" "Still counting, sir. At least 50 vessels so far, and more appearing every few minutes." Kethvar moved to the tactical display. What he saw made his breath catch. Ships were emerging from behind planets, moons, and asteroid clusters throughout the system, not the rough patrol vessels he had seen before, but sleek predators that moved with deadly purpose, Admiral. "We're being hailed by Captain Rodriguez," communications announced. "Put him through." Rodriguez appeared on the main screen, but his surroundings had changed. Instead of the cramped patrol ship bridge, he now stood in what could only be described as a command center. Multiple levels of tactical stations surrounded him, with dozens of officers monitoring various systems. "Admiral Kethvar, welcome aboard the UHSV Ragnarok, flagship of the Third Fleet." "Third Fleet?" Kethvar asked weakly. "One of our smaller formations, but adequate for demonstration purposes. We have 48 ships with us today, representing most classes in current service." On Kethvar's tactical display, the human fleet was taking shape. The ships moved in a complex pattern that looked chaotic at first, but gradually revealed itself to be highly organized. Unlike the elegant formations of Zephyrian fleets, the humans spread out to cover maximum space, each ship supporting others while maintaining individual freedom of movement. "Sir, we're receiving detailed scans of the human vessels," his science officer reported privately. "The energy signatures are unprecedented." "How unprecedented?" "Their flagship alone is generating more power than our entire battle group combined." "Answer the weapon systems." The officer's skin patterns showed deep anxiety. "I count over 300 individual weapon mounts on that ship alone." HFY studied the Ragnarok through the main viewer. The ship was massive, easily twice the size of his own flagship, but where Zephyrian vessels emphasized beauty and elegance, this one was purely functional. Every surface seemed designed for war. Armor plates covered weapon clusters, sensor arrays, and what looked like launch bays for smaller vessels. "Captain Rodriguez," HFY said carefully, "your fleet is quite impressive." "Thank you, Admiral. We've prepared a comprehensive demonstration of human tactical doctrine. With your permission, we'll conduct live fire exercises showing various combat scenarios." "What kind of scenarios?" "Fleet engagement, planetary assault, system defense, and deep strike operations. Each exercise will demonstrate different aspects of our military philosophy." Before HFY could respond, his tactical officer spoke up urgently. "Sir, additional contacts appearing at the edge of the system. Large vessels moving fast. More human ships?" HFY asked. Rodriguez smiled grimly. "Target drones, Admiral. We brought some realistic opponents for the exercises." On the display, 6 large objects were approaching at high speed. They were clearly artificial, but their design was unlike anything HFY had ever seen. Each one was roughly the size of a Zephyrian heavy cruiser, bristling with weapons and defensive systems. "Those are combat drones?" he asked in amazement. "Modified from captured AI vessels during the rebellion," Rodriguez explained. "We keep a few around for training purposes. They're programmed with the tactics and capabilities of our most dangerous historical enemies. You fight training exercises against artificial intelligences. Only way to stay sharp. The AIs were our most capable opponents. If you can beat them, you can beat anyone." The first exercise began with what Rodriguez called a standard fleet engagement. The human ships spread out into a formation that maximized their firepower coverage while minimizing their vulnerability to area weapons. The AI drones responded by trying to concentrate their forces against what they calculated was the weakest point in the human formation. It was like watching a pack of wolves hunt. The human ships moved independently but with perfect coordination, each captain knowing exactly where every other ship would be and what it would do. When the drones tried to focus their attack, the humans flowed around them like water, always keeping the enemy in a crossfire while avoiding return fire. "Notice how each of our ships can operate independently if needed," Rodriguez's commentary explained. Zephyrian doctrine emphasizes central command and control. Human doctrine assumes that command ships will be targeted first, so every captain is trained to fight alone if necessary. The exercise lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, all 6 AI drones had been destroyed while the human fleet remained intact. But what impressed HFY most wasn't the outcome. It was how efficiently the humans had achieved it. No wasted shots, no unnecessary risks, just methodical destruction of the enemy force. "That was your standard engagement?" he asked. "Basic formation combat, yes. Now we'll demonstrate planetary assault doctrine." For the second exercise, the humans had constructed a mock planetary defense network using asteroid-mounted weapon platforms. The scenario assumed that a hostile planet needed to be neutralized quickly and completely. What followed was a textbook example of overwhelming force applied with surgical precision. The human fleet divided into specialized task forces. One group focused on eliminating orbital defenses. Another suppressed ground-based weapons, while a third delivered what Rodriguez casually referred to as planetary siege munitions. HFY watched in horrified fascination as the human fleet systematically dismantled the mock defenses. When resistance was encountered, they didn't just disable the weapons, they obliterated entire sections of the defensive grid. Nuclear warheads cracked open heavily armored positions, while antimatter torpedoes simply vaporized anything they touched. "The goal is complete suppression of enemy capabilities," Rodriguez explained. "We learned during the corporate wars that leaving any defensive systems intact just means you have to come back and fight again later." "What about civilian casualties?" HFY asked. "In a real scenario, civilian areas would be targeted with non-lethal systems first. Electromagnetic pulse weapons, sleep gas, infrastructure disabling agents. We prefer to avoid unnecessary deaths when possible. When possible. Rodriguez's expression hardened. Admiral, during the AI rebellion, the machines used civilians as human shields and weapon production workers. We learned that sometimes you have to choose between some casualties now or total extinction later. The third exercise demonstrated system defense. The human fleet scattered across the entire solar system, using planets, moons, and asteroid belts as cover. When mock enemies appeared at multiple entry points, the response was swift and coordinated. Each ship carries enough firepower to operate independently, Rodriguez explained as Kethavar watched human vessels emerge from hiding spots throughout the system. But they can also coordinate for maximum effect. The human ships didn't group together to meet the enemy. Instead, they used the entire system as a weapon, setting up crossfires and ambush points that turned every approach into a killing field. The mock enemies found themselves under attack from multiple directions simultaneously, with no safe retreat routes. We call it defense in depth, Rodriguez continued. Instead of meeting the enemy at our borders, we let them come into our space where we can control the engagement. But it was the final exercise that truly demonstrated the difference between human and Zephyrian military thinking. Rodriguez called it a deep strike operation. Sometimes you can't wait for the enemy to come to you, he explained. Sometimes you have to reach out and eliminate threats before they become problems. 6 human ships detached from the main fleet and accelerated toward the edge of the system. Their target was a mock enemy base constructed around a distant asteroid. But instead of approaching directly, the strike force split up and took different routes, using gravitational slingshots around planets and moons to build up speed. When they reached their target, they didn't engage in prolonged combat. Instead, they delivered a single devastating alpha strike that completely destroyed the base in seconds. Antimatter warheads, kinetic kill vehicles, and exotic weapons systems combined to turn the entire asteroid into expanding plasma. Total mission time, 43 minutes, Rodriguez reported. Enemy base eliminated with 0 friendly casualties. You destroyed it so quickly, Kethavar observed. Speed is life in deep strike operations. Get in, eliminate the target, get out before the enemy can respond. During the Belt Wars, we conducted raids hundreds of light years behind enemy lines. As the demonstrations concluded, Kethavar found himself studying the human fleet with new understanding. These weren't just weapons of war. They were instruments of a military philosophy that had been forged in crucibles of survival. Every tactic, every weapon system, every doctrine had been tested in real combat against enemies who wanted to wipe humanity from existence. Admiral Kethavar stood in his private quarters aboard the flagship, staring at the report he was about to transmit to the Hegemony High Council. In 40 years of military service, he had never written anything like it. How do you explain to your superiors that everything they believed about military power was wrong? The door chimed and his aide entered. Sir, Ambassador Chen is requesting a final meeting before we depart. She says it's important, of course. Have my shuttle prepared. 1 hour later, Kethavar sat across from the human diplomatic team for what would likely be their last formal meeting. The atmosphere was different now. The polite curiosity of first contact had been replaced by mutual respect, tinged with wariness. Admiral, Ambassador Chen began, we wanted to discuss the future relationship between our species before you return to hegemony space. I appreciate that, Ambassador. I must admit, my recommendations to the High Council will be quite different from what I expected when we first met. Captain Rodriguez leaned forward. What kind of recommendations? That the hegemony should pursue full diplomatic relations with humanity as equals, that we should establish mutual defense agreements and trade partnerships, and that we should under no circumstances consider humanity a threat to be contained. Why that last part? General Martinez asked. Kethavar's skin patterns shifted to show respect mixed with caution. Because I now understand that trying to contain humanity would be both impossible and suicidal. You give us too much credit, Admiral, Chen said diplomatically. Do I? Let me tell you what I've learned about your species in the past week. Kethavar activated a small display showing his analysis. Humans maintain the largest military force in known space. Your weapons technology exceeds anything in hegemony arsenals. Your tactical doctrine is based on actual combat experience against multiple enemy types. And your strategic philosophy assumes that any conflict could become a war of extinction. He paused, studying their faces. But most importantly, you've learned to hide your true nature behind diplomatic courtesy and peaceful intentions. We're not hiding anything, Rodriguez said firmly. We genuinely prefer peace. I believe you do. But you prefer it from a position of overwhelming strength. You've learned to speak softly precisely because you carry such a big stick. Ambassador Chen smiled sadly. You're not wrong, Admiral. Our history has taught us that peace is only possible when potential aggressors understand the cost of conflict. Which brings me to a question I must ask, Kethavar continued. What you've shown me over the past few days, is this truly representative of human military capabilities, or have you been diplomatic in your demonstrations? The humans exchanged those looks again. This time Kethavar was certain it meant they were debating how much truth he could handle. Captain Rodriguez, General Martinez said finally. Show him the reserves list. Rodriguez hesitated. Are you sure, General? Some of those projects are still classified. The Admiral needs to understand what he's dealing with. Show him the list. Rodriguez activated a holographic display that made Kethavar's blood run cold. It showed weapons systems that seemed to come from humanity's darkest nightmares. Planet crackers that could split worlds in half. Star killers that could trigger solar flares or even supernova events. Weapons designed not just to destroy enemies, but to eliminate entire civilizations so thoroughly that no trace would remain. These are prototype systems developed during the AI rebellion, Rodriguez explained quietly. Most were never used, but they exist. The Prometheus device, Martinez pointed to one entry, can sterilize every planet in a solar system simultaneously. The Ragnarok protocol, yes, we named it after the captain's ship, can collapse a star into a black hole. Why are you showing me this? Kethavar asked, his voice barely steady. Because, Ambassador Chen said gently, we want you to understand that when humans say we prefer peace, it's not because we're weak or naive. It's because we know what the alternatives look like. We've seen what total war can do, Rodriguez added. We've fought enemies who wanted to wipe us out completely. We built these weapons because sometimes the only way to prevent genocide is to make the cost so high that no one is willing to pay it. But we also learned something else, Chen continued. Power without restraint is just another form of extinction. That's why these weapons are locked away. That's why we try diplomacy first, second, and third. However, General Martinez said firmly, if someone does threaten human survival, we won't hesitate to use everything at our disposal. Kethavar sat in stunned silence, processing the implications. Finally, he looked up at the humans. Your species terrifies me, he said honestly. Good, Rodriguez replied. We should terrify you. We terrify ourselves sometimes, but you also intrigue me, Kethavar continued. You've somehow managed to become the most dangerous predators in known space while maintaining genuine desires for peace and cooperation. It's a balance, Chen admitted. Sometimes we get it wrong. But we keep trying. What happens now? Kethavar asked. That depends on your report to the Hegemony Council, Martinez answered. We're hoping for peaceful coexistence and mutual benefit. And if that doesn't work out? Rodriguez's expression hardened slightly. Then we'll continue to defend ourselves and our interests, with whatever level of force is necessary. I see. Kethavar stood to leave, then paused. Captain Rodriguez, one final question. Yesterday you mentioned that the fleet demonstration was conducted by one of your smaller formations. How small? The Third Fleet? It's actually one of our patrol fleets, responsible for routine system defense in the inner colonies. A patrol fleet? Our main battle fleets are significantly larger. First Fleet, for example, has over 400 ships, including 12 Dreadnought-class vessels. Kethavar felt dizzy. How many main battle fleets do you maintain? Currently, 6 are fully operational, with 2 more in refit and 1 being upgraded with new weapon systems. The Zephyrian admiral realized he needed to sit down again. The force he had witnessed, which could have destroyed the entire Hegemony fleet without losses, was considered a minor patrol formation by human standards. Admiral, Chen said softly, we hope our 2 species can be friends. The galaxy is a big place with room for everyone, but we also hope you understand why we can't accept protectorate status from anyone. I understand completely, Kethavar replied. In fact, I'm beginning to think the Hegemony should be asking you for protection. Rodriguez chuckled, but there was no humor in it. Admiral, I'm going to give you some advice to take back to your government. Humanity doesn't want to rule the galaxy. We don't want to impose our will on other species. We just want to be left alone to live our lives in peace. But if someone forces our hand, they'll discover why Earth is still inhabited by humans instead of the dozen different species that have tried to conquer or exterminate us over the centuries. As Kethvar prepared to leave for the final time, Ambassador Chen walked him to the docking bay. Admiral, I hope this hasn't damaged the possibility of friendship between our peoples. On the contrary, Kethvar replied, I think it's made friendship not only possible but necessary. The galaxy needs species that can talk to each other instead of shooting. We'd like that very much. However, I do have one request. Of course, when you make formal contact with the Hegemony High Council, could you possibly ease them into understanding your true capabilities? Perhaps start with your patrol ships and work up to the main battle fleets. Chen smiled. Of course, Admiral. We've learned that it's usually better to let people adjust gradually to new realities. 3 hours later, the Zephyrian fleet departed Earth's solar system. As they jumped to hyperspace, Admiral Kethvar was already composing his report to the High Council. The document would become required reading in Zephyrian military academies for generations to come. It detailed the first contact with a species that had mastered the art of being both genuinely peaceful and utterly terrifying. The report's final paragraph would be quoted in diplomatic schools across hegemony space. Recommend immediate establishment of full diplomatic relations with humanity. They are not a species that needs our protection. They are a species that could protect or destroy the entire hegemony, if they chose to do so. Fortunately for us, they seem to prefer protecting to destroying. It is strongly recommended that we do nothing to change their preference. Back on Earth, Captain Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Ragnarok, watching the Zephyrian fleet disappear into hyperspace. Think they'll cause trouble, sir? His executive officer asked. No, Rodriguez replied. Admiral Kethvar is smart enough to understand what he saw here. His government will make the right choice, and if they don't, Rodriguez smiled grimly, then they'll learn why Earth is called humanity's fortress and not humanity's capital. Sir? Because this isn't where we keep our government, Lieutenant. This is where we keep our weapons. In the depths of space, automated defense systems that had been built during the AI rebellion continued their silent watch. Planet-killing weapons waited in hidden bunkers. Star destroyers slumbered in armored vaults. And across human space, 22,000 warships maintained their eternal vigil. Humanity had learned the hardest lesson in the universe. If you want peace, you must be prepared for war. And they had prepared very, very well.